Hey, hello, and welcome. My name is Dr. Timothy Newton. I am an emergency physician, not a scientist, so please bear with me on the sciencey parts. I've been a practicing physician in Austin for 10 years at Seton Northwest, and soon to be St. David's. But this is a topic near and dear to my heart. I give it to med students, I give it to residents. I've kind of adapted it for a non-medical audience. But feel free to drill in afterwards on questions for anything medical if you want to hear more on that. So this is a nice little quote. I like quotes. I love stealing quotes. Up until recently, most medicine didn't work. That's kind of where we start with this talk and what we're doing with placebos these days. So just to give an idea of where we're going with this is a haphazard talk in 3 parts. So haphazard, there's actually 4 parts, if we include the questions. So I'm going to talk about how I first started thinking about placebo, how they used to think about it in the past, and up until today, and what we're doing with this going forward, and maybe how you can use it in your practice, even if you're not a physician or working in a hospital. Because I think a lot of these things are applicable and can and should be used. So going on or starting with my journey, I went to school in Las Vegas. This is where I swore the Hippocratic Oath at the Paris Casino. And yes, we did shots before and afterwards. Awkward part of the speech to mention because my parents are here in the back. But my first clinical practice was, you guessed it, say it with me, Ecuador. So after my first summer, after my first year of med school, I did 2 months with Child Health Family International at this lovely hospital in Quito. Gorgeous place. It was a teaching hospital. No one spoke English, so I learned Spanish very fast. I was in charge of bandaging wounds, fetching supplies, helping with stitches, odds and ends, lancing boils, all the fun, glamorous work. So Quito, Ecuador, for those not familiar, is at 10,000 feet, and it's in what's called the Avenida de los Volcanes. Oh my gosh, my accent's not great today. But so it's a very modern city. But if you step out even like 20 miles in either direction, you're in very remote and isolated communities. Very indigenous as a country. Only Bolivia has more folk where you can tell what tribe they are based on their necklace. There's some differences in hats, but the nuances were always lost on me. But I could tell that you were from this group, but not this group, and you would see them sitting on opposite sides of the room or whatnot. Kind of similar to just about any country, they kind of otherized their minorities. So the doctors in the hospital were always saying, like, why can't these people learn Spanish? They all spoke a language called Quechua, which made communication a little bit different or difficult. But one thing that kept coming through is I would ask them, why did it take you so long to come in? Healthcare in Ecuador is free. You could have come in. And one thing they said to me a whole bunch is, well, I tried the guinea pig thing a couple times, and that didn't work, so I came in. I was like, the guinea pig? What are you talking about, guinea pigs? Famously, cuy, or guinea pigs, are consumed in Peru and Ecuador, but they're actually so much more for the actual indigenous people. This is me in a kitchen. You can't actually tell, but the floor underneath me is covered in guinea pigs. Yes. If you go to a traditional kitchen up in the highlands, every kitchen has guinea pigs. And the guinea pigs serve 2 functions. One, to eat scraps, like any good pet would, but also to tell who is a good person. They consider QI to be very, very sensitive. So if you walk into a traditional kitchen and they run away, you suck. And it goes even further than that, because I mentioned they do the guinea pig thing. It's actually a part of traditional medicine. So you'll see this on the streets. This is not really what they do with the guinea pigs. They're using what's called an ice cream bean, which is so funny to me. It's like totally not what they use. They actually will get you into your undies and rub you up and down with a live guinea pig. It's similar to the mal ojo in the Mexican tradition, where there's the idea that the guinea pig is so sensitive, it will absorb your diseases. So after the ceremony, they actually dissect the guinea pig to see what it picked up from you. And based on what they find, they pick the appropriate herbs, and you guessed it, they spit alcohol on you. There's a beverage called aguardiente. They spray on you, and then they beat you with the appropriate herbs, which in their mind mixes with the alcohol and gives you medicine. And I know it sounds unscientific, but they also blow cigarette smoke on you to seal in the medicine. I couldn't find any pictures because this is not something that is open to the public. So I was so confused by that. I was like, why are these people not picking free medicine when they're doing something ridiculous instead? I kind of walked away from there with some sort of moral superiority I probably shouldn't have had. After med school, I went to Detroit, though, and I was so excited about real medicine. But I found that real medicine is still kind of weird. Oh, this is actually a picture of me from my first day as a resident. And I actually keep the same badge because I think it's funny that I use the same photo from 2011, though I do not look that babyish. So Detroit just raised more questions. Why do some people react differently to bullets than others? We would have trauma bays where they were separated by curtains, and one patient shot in the same place as the person next to them would be screaming in pain or moaning, another one would be chill. The other thing I would see sometimes, I would be sitting with a patient and they would say, thank you, doctor, for that medicine you gave me. I feel so much better. And I'm like, I haven't given you medicine yet. Strange. So the next big thing where I started to think about placebo more, or people's varying response to medications, was actually in Iquitos, Peru. It's a really cool town that you can only get to by plane or by 3-day boat journey in the Amazon rainforest. So we did we took over an abandoned military clinic, Santa Rosa, I believe it was called. But we got mobbed. We had people lining up around the block, showing up like 5 hours before we opened. We actually had to get the military to protect our facility because people kept climbing over the fence to get care. And again, this was strange because healthcare is free in Peru. And all we had was medications to hand out, just like a couple weeks supply of blood pressure medications. What's the big draw? After we did a couple days at our clinic, we actually got on an Amazon riverboat, and we went from indigenous village to indigenous village. This is my mentor, Dr. Rich Reedy, on the Amazon Queen. So we would go to each village up the Amazon River, and people would come to the shore to meet us and get on the boat. But at this point, we had so little medications because we got mobbed in our first couple days. So all I have is just vitamins and like a 7-day supply of vitamins. And people are lining up, and they're just like so grateful afterwards, thanking me for coming and thanking me for what I'm doing. And I felt like such an absolute fraud. I'm handing out what are basically sugar pills. I feel like I'm doing them a disservice, or I'm getting their hopes up, and I swore never to do international medicine again. And to make it less of a downer note, here's me with the sloth. Oh no, it's a taper. I don't have a lot of medical photos of me because it feels weird to like say someone, hey, photo? I don't know. I don't do that. Also on cool animals, it's a sloth. And an extremely ugly river dolphin. No one ever tells you how strange river dolphins are, but they're strange looking. So I felt like a fraud, but I was actually stepping into a long tradition of physicians who are trying to do the best with absolutely very little. Like we said, we've been doing mostly placebo ever since Hippocrates, who was kind of a weird dude if he existed in the first place. The ancient physicians knew a lot about skeletons. The Crusaders would have their bones boiled and sent back to their homeland for burial, and just bones are more available in general. So knowledge about bones, pretty accurate. Organs, they thought were basically hydroflasks filled with fluids, the four humors. Some of that persists to this day with people being so concerned about bile. Please stop worrying about bile. If you have a green vomit, it's just stomach acid. It's nothing terrible. You're going to be fine. So that's kind of how they approached medicine. Here's kind of how they treated it. All of it bad. For the most part, bad. Bloodletting, that's what off to George Washington. They did a little bit of bloodletting cupping, which I thought was a little interesting, because cupping actually has a lot of good science behind it. I do recommend it for musculoskeletal pains. Emetics, don't do it. Syrup of ipecac, don't induce vomiting. Just don't. Laxatives, there's some evidence for that. When someone has a high potassium, to this day, we give them a medication called Kxalate, and they poop out their excess potassium. We're still doing the Hippocratic stuff. And congestive heart failure, you urinate off the fluid. It is a fluid issue. Cautery was not as popular as the other options, but even as recently as, I'm going to cheat and look at the date, 1826, the same guy who invented the stethoscope also had what he called an incandescent copper rod, and he would treat TB with doing 12 to 14 burns on the chest. I do not know why he thought that was a thing. Don't do that. This is what some of the bloodletting tools looked like. The stuff on the left, you'll see people talk about from time to time. That was more used for livestock. So these devices, you have a phlegm stick. So these are designed for bloodletting an animal that might hurt you. So you would place this on the jugular or saphenous and hit it with a stick and then like run away because animals like people don't like it. An actual physician would use what's called the thumb knife, the thumb lancet. That was up to Civil War. And then 1800s, we actually had a spring-loaded device, which is very similar to what we use for diabetic finger sticks to this day, which to me is kind of cool, the continuation of traditions. I'm a big tradition guy in medicine. So moving onward, we're getting a little bit more into studying placebos, or thinking about placebos at least. So this Venice dude was doing clinical trials on gunpowder burns. Back then, there was a belief that there was something in the bullet or gunpowder that was poisoning people. And again, that is still something true today. If you get shot in the leg, we leave it in. But everyone thinks we're going to take it out. And I think it's amazing that this has persisted since Venice. So this guy came up with a clinical trial, because at that time, they cured gunpowder residue burns with boiling oil. So this guy did a clinical trial where he did one half of the face with burning oil and the other half with a poultice of onion paste. And he found better results with onion paste. A placebo. Imagine that. So you're starting to see why someone might actually prefer placebo, why someone might actually prefer to not have boiling oil. Kind of in the same way, the Quechua people didn't want to come into the ER because they were treated like crap. They would rather suffer from disease than come in and have someone belittle their language and their culture and treat them as less than, which to me speaks to both the crappiness of that system and just the difficult choices sometimes patients face. And the way the physicians weren't necessarily that I was working with, considering the cultural context of the people who came in for their care. So moving on with placebo, this is where the word comes from. It's a hymn of the office of the dead. It's a song from the Bible that was sung at funerals. Also at funerals, you would get a free meal. So you would have people who did not know the deceased coming in singing their placebos. And they started to be called placebos. They were fakers. This continued on with Chaucer on the left. The merchant in the Canterbury Tales is named Placebo, and he was a faker. But we didn't really... Oh, wow. I'm going way too slow. We may just not finish the third part. So on the right is the first usage of the placebo for a sham treatment. This was metallic tractors. This guy claimed he had this special rod that had special properties that would treat you for any illness. And Haygarth, who was really instrumental in smallpox prevention, really called him out and made it his mission to expose frauds. Huge fan of this guy. So this is what we think of as placebos today, sugar pills. Though, of course, sugar pills are not necessarily a placebo because they do have an effect. Give it to a diabetic or a kid, you're going to see some stuff. True placebos are actually homeopathic medicine. There's the belief that if you dilute a medicine to a single molecule, the whole water resonates with the power of that molecule and is more effective than if it was all medicine. So if you look in the back of homeopathic bottles, you will see how many parts per million. And the more watery, the better. Funnily enough, homeopathic remedies are really popular with our Latino population in Austin. All the time, I have patients coming in with homeopathic medicines saying it doesn't work. So here's the mechanism by which it works. The definition of a hormone is a chemical from one part of your body that does something in another part of the body. And a drug is something that comes from outside your body to do something in your body. And it really only works if your body recognizes that chemical. You have to have the receptors to something you already make in your system. Otherwise, it's like microplastics that move right through you or linger. So placebo is kind of like a drug in that it's telling your body to release the hormones that are already in you. If you think of pain as a message, you get shot, it hurts because your body wants you to get the heck out of there. And then you release the hormones once you receive the message that you are safe and let's stop panicking. So placebo is one of those things that encourages your body to think that everything's okay, you're going to be fine. Here are some of the mechanisms by which to improve the placebo effect on a patient. We can skip past this. The most important thing to know is don't lie. You never want to lie to your patient. if you tell them this is not going to hurt a bit, thinking that you're going to have a placebo effect, you're screwed because it's going to hurt. And you're going to lose all trust from the patient. Don't do that. So the gist of the talk is basically an admiration of this guy, a Harvard acupuncturist who in like 2005 really revolutionized how we use placebos in medicine. Not necessarily to give fake drugs, but how to boost the placebo effect of the drugs we're already giving. If there's a way to make the treatments we already give more potent. And I know he looks like this guy, but he's got a lot of research behind him. So here are 3 studies of his that really encapsulated how I started to think about how we treat our patients in the hospital. So this one is to show that it's not just the medications that make an effect. If the medications are given by someone who's nice, the effect gets boosted by like 20%. Also, we can skip over this slide for interest of time. Here's the one that really gets to me. So he wanted to prove that it was possible to have a positive effect on a patient without even giving them medication. So he would have the very compassionate physician hand them a bottle that said the word placebo on it. And he still found an effect because there is more to medicine than just handing the pills. Who you are as a physician will make a profound difference on the care you can give and the care your patients are going to receive. These are some of the things that maybe know better than placebo that he likes to rail against. And how much time do we have left? Sorry.
The biggest mouthful of pretzel I've ever had.
All right, just cook. So the one I focus most on is the number 3. As an educator of young physicians, it's also the one I think I need to beat into their heads with my own fleam stick because I don't think it's taught well, and I just don't think it's taught well. So the thing I impress upon my students and residents the most is you have to have the patient feel like you care about them. You have to have them feel that you want their best interest at heart, not for any woo-woo reason, but because it can actually make their pain better faster. The same way you would hear different levels of shouting among people shot in different rooms had a lot to do with who was sitting bedside with them. And this is why I want you all in your own business or clinical practice to really be the best of the best in ways that have nothing to do with your memorization of the Krebs cycle. So what does it mean to love someone? In the Christian tradition, I don't always like myself, but I always do feel love for myself. I want the best for me. I want the best for me. And that's what you need to do for your patients. You may not like them, you may not be able to relate to them, but you gotta just feel that empathetic fellow human in front of you is deserving of your best possible care. So I run over with my students from top to bottom of like how to express care to your patients and how to learn to care for your patients. At this point, I've seen like 70,000 people as patients. And I'll be honest, it's hard to see each person as the person deserving of care and love and not just another cold or another flu. So here's my techniques that you can use in your business too. So start with the front door. Spend a lot of time with your receptionist or your salesperson so that they feel affection for you and they know you feel affection for them. So when your patient walks in, they say, oh, you have a good doctor today, it's Dr. Newton. Or they're in a really good mood, which primes your patient to be in a good mood when they finally see you. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to love them and care about them if they don't chew your head off the moment you walk in the door. It's kind of a loop. Happy triage nurse, happy patient, which makes you happy, which makes you better able to provide a good placebo effect. And if your patients are happy, your nurses are happy. So you kind of want your team to be unified and on the same mission. And so when the patient sees your team, it's kind of a reflection of who you are as a physician, that these people respect you, these people care about you, and you care about them. Because if these people who know you really well really admire, respect, and love you, they've probably been doing something right. And if they see you interacting warmly with the nurses, they know you're going to treat them right too. It's okay to be goofy, it's okay to be silly, it's just not in front of the patient. But so I was going to go over what's demonstrated in these images that are part of the placebo effect amplification, but we'll move along. And just say that the team-centric approach is way more effective than just like a lone wolf staring out the window, not looking at the patient, and maybe looking at his own reflection. Yeah. So we talked about what you do before you walk in the room. Here's what you do when you do walk in the room. You got to understand that you are bursting into someone's bedroom, essentially. They are in bed, and they are naked, and you walk in, it's going to take them a while to adjust. So I always make up an excuse for why I'm not getting going right away. I always say, hold on, I forgot something, or hold on, I need to go get a chair. Because they may be expecting someone Latino, they may be expecting a man, they may be expecting a woman. They need time to adjust their expectations. You may be younger or older than they were expecting. You want to give them time to prepare their thoughts so that they can give you the best possible history, and they're not going to annoy the crap out of you by rambling and wandering and stumbling and umming and awing. So you're helping them help you, and when they help you, you can help them better. So yeah, don't try and talk down to them, get too sciencey. You may think that you're impressing them with how smart of a doctor you are. They don't care. They see the white coat and they assume you are knowledgeable. Your whole career, you're trying to impress people to get to your next step, your medical career. You got to understand, you got to stop trying to show off. You got to stop trying to impress people. They know you're smart, and hopefully you're smart. This is actually what impresses them more. If you see they are thirsty and you offer them some water, that's the kind of love a host shows their guest. If you are the actual one who bandages their wounds, that's what their mother did. That's how we show love, and that's how they feel that you love them. If you see them crying, if you see them with a runny nose, you hand them Kleenex. Because if you're willing to do that, they start to think, oh, he's definitely going to see me. He's definitely going to treat my concerns. If they're cold, give them a blanket. It's simple decency, and you will be stunned at how many doctors don't do it and the kind of reaction that you can get. So we're winding down. I do apologize. So while you're in the room, always add something to further show that I see them as a person. Here are some examples. And this does two things. One, it shows that I see them. And two, you can learn about them and you'll care about them more. And you might learn something really wonderful. You might hear a story you never would have. It's a powerful thing, the one non-medical thing. It's the best. I could give you some examples if you want. And when you leave the room, you got to be very intentional about it. Medicine is unusual in that if they do not believe that you have given them the appropriate care, they're not going to fill that prescription. You may have picked the exact right medication for them. They may not take it. They're like, this guy's a jerk. He didn't even spend any time in the room with me. So validate their concerns, see why you came in. I'm so glad it's not a heart attack. I hope you get back to your garden soon. I always like to try and do a throwback to show I really was listening. And yeah, when you leave the room, tell them why. I'll say, I'm going to go get you those medications. And when they leave the ER, encourage optimism. You wouldn't think that ER is an optimistic specialty, dealing with street folk and drugs and some of the less than pleasant people in society. But I actually love emergency medicine because it allows me to hope. So if I have a patient as a family medicine doctor that I saw for 20 years, I might grow frustrated that they are not losing weight, they're not taking their medications. With ER, I can hope. I can hope that maybe they're going to stop using drugs, maybe this back pain's going to get better. And I want you to encourage that hope too, so that they're looking within for positive signs and instead of like looking for the negative. I think there's a lot of power in that, and I encourage you guys to explore that. I'll leave you with 2 quotes, because I love quotes, for religious people and non. St. Francis of Assisi, love that guy. Everybody thinks he said the first thing, but it's more properly the second. We spend so much time thinking about the race to find the diagnosis, the race to find the cure, that we need to remember that the race itself is medicine. Every step of the way, as your patient enters your hospital, should be in the goal of making them feel better. It's not just the meds. You got to boost that placebo. And for the science folk, this is a quote from Plato, where he says there's a leaf that works, but you got to sing a song first. Otherwise, the leaf doesn't work. And I think we've lost the song in medicine. We got so excited that we finally found a leaf that works. We forget that we've been giving care for thousands of years without the right medications, with maybe only 7 vitamins on an Amazon river ship. You gotta remember there's more to medicine, and I would like to see that taught more. And that goes for other fields of business as well. Totally forgot how I was gonna end it, but get out there and sing your songs.
All right, thank you so much. That was fantastic. So, do we have questions? All right, see your hand popping right up. Here we go.
So my question is, you've come at this from the perspective of the practitioner who's
Yes.
offering service. For those of us that are in the position of receiving service, what can we do, if anything, in order to harness or maybe be better positioned to receive that placebo effect? But how can we actively go into the situation to help amplify that?
Excellent, excellent question. The number one thing I advocate to all my patients to have is a list of their concerns printed out ahead of a time. So you know exactly the points you want to hit, and you can be really efficient. Doctors, unfortunately, are very, 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 very busy. And sometimes if you are stammering or stuttering in the first couple sentences, the doctor is going to be like, well, I'm not going to get anything out of this history. I'm going to order some x-rays, bye. So 1, having a prepared idea of the lists of concerns you want to have. And 2, having a printout of all your medications and all your medical history. So that way you could hand the sheet to them, laminate it in your wallet, whatever you want to do. So that way you're more efficient with your time. And it actually helps the doctor like you more, because in the same way that patients judge doctors on a different standard of care, doctors treat their patient, I'm saying it poorly. Doctors' opinion of patients is based on things they were never trained on. So I do a very orderly history. Sometimes we think less of a patient for having a disorderly history. One thing I press upon my students in the absence of patients coming in with an organized list is remember that the world is filled with different storytellers. There's Wes Andersons out there. There's M. Night Shyamalans. Think about your favorite relative who tells like a long story and then gets to the point. Or some people start with the point and then there's the story that builds in. Be accepting of different ways of telling a story. But to patients, understand that most doctors are very linear, so have everything very bullet pointy. Good question.
All right, we were off to a good start. Let's find our second question. All right, here you go.
Worldwide, do you think that there are any particular cultures or healthcare systems that are better at implementing the system or worse in particular?
That's a hard one. I'm really only familiar with Peru and Ecuador. I haven't practiced outside the States anywhere else. And my focus has always been on American medicine, so I can't tell you.
All right, who's next? Okay. Working down the line.
I always see placebo effects in terms of self-reported effects, things like pain or energy levels. What kind of not self-reported effects do you see?
Well, that's a hard one because my focus is on pain, but they've also shown excellent ones for nausea. That guy I was showing earlier, I found a whole bunch of studies on hot flashes. But IBS, he did a lot of work on IBS. But there's a huge mind-body component for just about any disease. If you see someone who's out of work, their experience of whatever problem they have is so much more significant. If they don't have a purpose and they're spending time dwelling on it, every single problem is gonna feel worse. That's what we call the nocebo effect. Placebos are things that add benefit. Being unemployed would be a nocebo that would affect every possible symptom. So I'm willing to believe that there's some placebo effect for others. I just haven't studied it. Oh, I'll give you one example real quick. Carbidopa, levodopa. So the medication for Parkinson's, carbidopa, levodopa, they do what are called fMRIs, where they give you a radioactive glucose, and it shows where there's more brain activity. And they found that placebos in Parkinson's patients can actually release dopamine, which is what you need in Parkinson's. So Parkinson's would be an example for which there's some pretty robust studies. Oh, another classic one with carbidopa, levodopa, it's fun to say, is the Robin Williams movie Awakenings. That's actually based on the life of Oliver Sacks, in which there was a whole year in which people who had bacterial meningitis were able to get up and walk through the power of placebo. Though that effect faded, similar to the way that when a new, that's a whole different story, but bacterial meningitis, encephalopathy post-bacterial meningitis. Yeah.
All right, I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions.
So you alluded to the busyness of the medical profession.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm curious, this is an awesome talk, and I'm sure your students benefit from it. And I'm curious, do they get more than the talk? Do they get opportunities to actually practice this stuff? Or is it just great, now you know about placebo, let's move on?
Oh, I'm a clinical educator. I'm not on stages like this often. When I give talks, it's to people I work with on a daily basis. So they actually see me use it, and I will have them be in the room with me for a certain number of encounters. And I will actually sit next to them while they're talking to patients, and then afterwards break their little hearts.
All right, I think I saw one more question. Two. Oh, we're going to do two. I'm gonna let you go, and then Jacob's going to pull rank to bring us home.
Let's see. I used to live in Ecuador, and
Oh,
my gosh, back in the day.
where at in Ecuador?
In Quito.
Oh, awesome.
But
I lived on 10 de diciembre.
oh yeah,
close to the
I lived on
estadio.
Gonzales Suarez. I went to Academia Cotopaxi. But anyway, this was like all back in like the 1980s, right?
Did
And
you
when
drink
I-
Nite? Sorry,
What?
go on.
And so I lived there as like part of an embassy family. And back in the day, like if we wanted to go to the hospital, we were flown to Panama.
Really?
And there was kind of a reason for that because, like, when I went to hospitals in Ecuador, like, well, especially the one time I really ended up in a hospital is at the beach, and like, there were bugs everywhere. There were no like X-rays or anything, and yet people wanted to do surgery on me to remove my appendix, even though I just had food poisoning. And someone sprayed like actual Raid on me because I was like complaining about the bugs, and there really were bugs everywhere. And I was just wondering, like, so what are Ecuadorian hospitals like today? I'm sure they're much better.
Sure. Eugenio Espejo. And most of the hospitals in Quito, there's no visitors. So to enter the building, you have to pass through like a whole crowd of worried loved ones. And there'll be a chain across the front door that a security guard will unhook to allow you in. I did a week at the maternal hospital, and it's no visitors while your wife or loved one is delivering, which is so messed up. And they don't even have food for you. So once you enter the hospital when you're in labor, you have no food until you deliver, which is wild. That being said, in Quito, we had CAT scanners, we had operating rooms, though the operating rooms had windows that were open because they didn't have air conditioning. Whoa. Not the most sterile, but definitely very relaxing.
All right, we have one more question to bring us home. What you got?
So I'm just curious, it seemed like a lot of your research and talk was about kind of how maybe a doctor or a medical professional could give a placebo effect to a patient. But in the spirit of our first talk, is there a way that you could give a placebo effect to a loved one, a friend, a family member? Does it have to come from a doctor to be effective? Or could it be more communal or even to yourself?
There's that slide. Are we able to go back on slides? The big chart. I was gonna. Oh, there we go. A placebo effect can be considered any sort of externality. I don't want to make that bigger, but So when you are giving news to your loved one, having good verbal and nonverbal language, I feel statements, very classic. They can definitely make your partner feel more improved. Also, the setting, making sure that you talk to your loved one in a facility that they feel comfortable with and that they feel controlled, so they are grounded to the point where they are receptive to what you have to talk about. Get the setting right. Oh, please don't stare at that weird photo of me. Good language, good beliefs and expectations on both sides, and just cultivating a warm and loving relationship, even before the point of conflict. So when you are trying to get through an issue, you already have a good rapport. Same thing with nurses. You do your best work on rapport before the workday starts, before everybody's busy on their shift.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool.
That was great.